All right. So once again, welcome everyone to KubeCon and to the Azure Kubernetes Day. Really good to see you all. Really good to be here, to have you here. And hello to everyone watching virtually as well. Really good to have you with us for the whole day or for the parts that really interest you. My name is Jorge Palma. I'm a PM lead with the Azure Kubernetes service team. And I'm going to talk you to a little bit of some of the things we've been working on, some of the things we are working. You're going to have a day full of different topics that are going to go a bit more in depth, and I'm going to start by covering some of them here. But maybe, I think this question is getting both old and producing weird results, but I want to still give it a shot to kind of make a point. How many of you would consider yourselves kind of exclusively a developer? Hands up for this. One hand up. How many of you would consider yourselves exclusively an operator, an SRE, administrator, architect? Hands up. How do you consider yourself just a bunch of things that you really can't put into words and define really well what you are these days? All right? Yes. Realize that. 2 hands up. I see yes. So that's kind of the nature today, and this kind of question to kind of understand where you are. It's my point and my belief that it's becoming a bit more and more unnecessary. Everybody is a developer these days, coming from the tech industry or not. Everybody is doing SRE work. Everybody is doing administrative architecture work. That's kind of the nature of where we are today. And especially in I would say the current reality that we're facing with both supply chain shortages, talent kind of shortages as well, because the fact is talent in tech is not as widespread as it was before with things like our economic kind of macro situation that we're seeing. This is pretty interesting because folks have to be both more creative, but also we're already being very creative before. We're already kind of having all these multiple hats before. And does this kind of resonate with a lot of you where your backlog, your work stack is just increasing and somewhat like this curve? See some nods. I can definitely relate to it. And an interesting number that we've seen is that over 500 million projected new applications for 2023 will be cloud native. So that's a lot of work, and I'm certainly hoping that we can split it across this room because that's really a lot of apps and a lot of work to do. Now, for all of this, in a world where we're all kind of using different hats, having different roles, having different functions, different activities, have a backlog that seems this exponential curve, have not just the new apps work, but also existing apps that you need to actually migrate, that you need to maintain, that you need to modernize, that you need to innovate with, just keep the lights on. All of it is really a lot of work. And this is, today more than ever, the velocity matters. I think PowerPoint is already playing it slippy today, but I actually had a background picture in this slide, believe it or not, which was on purpose, not showing anyone coding as your typical stock images, was just showing some people talking. And that was actually deliberate, because as you think about developer velocity, it's not really about how fast you type, it's not really about how many lines of code you're able to ship. It's really all about how you actually can drive more revenue to the business, is actually how you can get that backlog, that line, addressed, is actually how can you actually produce more value, and doing so not necessarily by typing faster, but actually being able to leverage all the things that are the cloud native mechanisms and technologies that are out there to help you and support you. But what is cloud native? And you'll see a lot saying that the app of the future is cloud native, the future is cloud native, we're all in the cloud native, and at KubeCon and Cloud Native Con. So what exactly is it? And there are many definitions. I think one of the simplest one that I would say is it's something that supports the slides I had before, both because I had them and because I think it makes sense. So once you have something that is cloud native, the goal is really to support that developer velocity, that ability to go from zero to new business to more revenue really quick. And it's something as well in terms of the app and the characteristics of it and the characteristics of the architecture of your environment is really an environment that gives you that agility to go faster, but also to iterate, and to do so with quality, ensuring that your app is resilient, ensure that you have reliability, that you're able to withstand errors, issues, and you do so at large scale, at planetary scale, really, and are able to go from zero to a global app to a boom app really, really quickly, and doing so without compromising security. So ensuring that you have at all times a tight environment that you're able to not compromise and not scheme on while still delivering on all these premises. All right, so preambles aside, typical slide for KubeCon. I'm not actually going to go through it. You're all here. You know Kubernetes, I'm assuming. Anyone doesn't know Kubernetes here? Okay, you're joking with me. Okay, fine. You don't know Kubernetes at all. All right, so this slide is for you. For the rest of you, I'm so glad that I put it now, because all of you are just like rolling my eyes, but that gentleman right there just saved the day. So obviously Kubernetes is fantastic as a technology and as a platform that enables a lot of what we just saw. A lot of what I just said are needs and characteristics for applications and environments. It delivers us that great scaling ability. It delivers the ability for enterprises and businesses to have their own scheduling constraints. It delivers that self-healing, that infrastructure abstraction, and that declarative nature that Kubernetes really has, and that enables us to go much faster, to go in a much more resilient and higher quality way. Now, in a similar way, I would argue most of you know what Kubernetes is not, and what Kubernetes maybe does not give you. It might not be the single best thing and easiest thing to start, as an example. It's something we hear a lot. Oh, it's complex. Oh, it's so I'm sure all of you have heard all those, I would say, memes and all those kind of feedback points for Kubernetes. It's like, oh, maybe it's fantastic, but it's, you know, it's like a spaceship. Sometimes it's hard to operate if you don't know what you're doing there. Oh, sometimes it's just so hard all the way even to set up. So without kind of further ado, I'd like to just go on a quick story, if you would indulge me here, about AKS and how it came to be. So maybe even starting from the bottom, AKS's mission, all the way back when it started, was to try and get Kubernetes to the user's fingertips as quickly, as easily as possible. Back then, and even before I was in this team, before I was actually even collaborating with the AKS team, I was actually doing several things, several consulting work and projects, or actually it was just setting up Kubernetes clusters for customers, which was kind of months-long projects that we would go in, we would set up Kubernetes, a cluster, take like about a month or so doing it, then give the keys to the customer, and then run as fast as we could. And if the customer was able to even catch up to us, we would then charge more money for actually teaching them how to use it. So when at Azure, and we're not the only ones to see that, it was just sad to kind of see that model where there's just this brilliant platform and technology that could enable so much innovation, that could enable so much revolution even in the way that we develop, that we operate applications, but it was so hard to get to. It had such a high bar to get to. So our original mission is, how can we kind of completely smooth this out? How can we give Kubernetes to users in a very simple way? So I'd say we kind of achieved that, very much so. So I would say we're pretty successful at that mission as of today, but that mission then evolved. And it evolved into, okay, now we give you a Kubernetes cluster, it's easy, you started, but there's a lot of things you need to do after. The day-to operations, the maintenance, the upgrades. So we set up to really automate and provide you with all of these things in order to simplify the day two, so that, again, you can focus on developer velocity or business velocity, or however you define it, essentially focusing on delivering value to business instead of delivering value to the platform or delivering value to the infrastructure, which is really not the business itself. All right, so where is AKS today, and what is our current mission and our current vision? So I guess if you're like me, you're looking at this slide and you're just zooming in that asterisk, that star right there. It says at no charge. I know a lot of you are already laughing. You're just like, yeah, I saw that, and I'm like, nah, I'm wondering what that's all about. So I can jump into it and kind of fool your curiosity there. AKS, when we deliver a fully managed service, we do it so at no charge, meaning the control plane of that cluster is completely free. If you ever set up Kubernetes by yourself anywhere, you will know that the masters and the control plane needs to run somewhere. In AKS, that does run somewhere, and that is managed by AKS, but is free. So the asterisk there, the first thing to say about it is it's about the control plane, and the second part of it is for production environments and for cases where you very well want to have an SLA and you want to have guarantees and even ensure that you have auto-scaling and that your production environment is ready to scale your business, you might want to have an SLA. And so in AKS, we have a standard tier that contains, that is paid and that contains this SLA for you as well. So that's the second part of what this star is for. But, now actually following the order of the slide finally, we at the moment are pretty happy with being able to give you the fastest kind of managed Kubernetes experience, the fastest way to get a cluster out there, but also the fastest way to delete one. Because it's hard belief, even though it might seem contradictory, why would you put some effort in making deleting so fast? And that's because, again, we believe that as a platform, AKS is about delivering Kubernetes in an easy, rapid way without ever abstracting it, but delivering it in a very fast way. One of our most common use cases with AKS is really about, test environments, to test PRs. You don't want to go, start to submit a PR, wait for the automated tests to run and have that take a day, have that take how much time? Typically already your test suite was going to take its sweet time. You don't want the infrastructure itself to actually take long. And that's why AKS is actually pretty successful use case, being really quickly to create and delete, not only saving you money from resources perspective, but also from time perspective, which is pretty valuable for that velocity we mentioned before. The second thing, I'm going to say seamless DevSecOps with CI/CD integration, the first mouthful of the day. So again, what's the difference here? Kubernetes is a Lego box. It integrates with every single CI/CD system out there that you probably can think of and name. So it holds anything, it integrates with anything, it's extremely extensible. So what is the key thing for AKS here? Well, I think as Corey already mentioned, this is the Azure Pre-Day, which is part of Microsoft. And so you very well know Microsoft has a very broad and mature developer ecosystem. So one of the key things that we want to make sure is that there's a seamless integration with that ecosystem and AKS at no expense of any additional integration with the open source ecosystem. We want to just make sure that you have that ability to have an end-to-end experience that you can leverage. And DevSecOps. So not just the developer ecosystem like VS Code or GitHub that you're able to integrate with and you're able to leverage, but also making sure that you have a secure experience throughout it and you're able to bake in DevSecOps or the shift left mentality into your work, ensuring that you're able to be scanning your images, your code, the technical vulnerabilities all the way early on. So that's what this means, and this is what this line is for, the difference that we're trying to deliver there. Enterprise-grade security and policy controls. Once again, this is really all about kind of the bread and butter that Microsoft has been doing for the last 40 years. And we're, in all honesty, just trying to leverage that while, again, ensuring that we remain, as the next point is going to say, 100% vanilla Kubernetes, 100% open source and extensible. So it's all about how do we integrate with existing tools that a lot of enterprises already use, like AAD, like Defender, like Policy, and how can we make them available to Kubernetes and for Kubernetes, and vice versa, how can we integrate Kubernetes into them? Now, all of this, and this is kind of a really key point for us. We want to do it as we keep AKS 100% aligned and 100% vanilla Kubernetes. This is extremely important for us for a number of reasons, but a few of them to note is, if you saw the slide before, which I hope even though you know Kubernetes, you take a look at it, a lot of those benefits are from Kubernetes, and I made an explicit point there. We don't want to compromise any of those benefits. Similarly, we don't want to compromise any of the benefits that the technology being open source, open governed, et cetera, provides you. The portability, the open source innovation that comes with it. So we want to make sure that we are 100% vanilla Kubernetes is something that is a guarantee that we've done from the beginning and we'll continue to do. And trust me, it poses a lot of challenges. It poses a lot of work to actually be able to continue to deliver an enterprise service while still maintaining full open source commitment and full vanilla 100% first. It's actually technically not that hard to just fork and just be able to then, oh, I need to do a quick patch. I can just fork it, do a quick patch, and user happy. But at that point, that's really not vanilla Kubernetes anymore. And the more you do that, the more you drift, the more you compromise your portability, as an example. So you might have gone to Kubernetes because you want to be, my code runs anywhere the same way, my configuration runs anywhere the same way, and that might not be the true anymore. So it takes some effort to actually put that work upstream to ensure that that velocity is on our side as well, to deliver, be it fixes, be it patches for you, and be it features and innovation as well. So when we say at the bleeding edge, I mean, jumping to the announcements already, we're announcing Kubernetes 1.25 today, and we're still pushing more and more to the dates that we 100% align with upstream on the version releases, because that is really the only way to guarantee vanilla Kubernetes at the same time that you guarantee support for it, is to ensure that you're working with the community and you're working with Kubernetes upstream to bring all that goodness, all those features and all those patches. Nothing, this is kind of our mantra, nothing ever gets done unless it's being pushed to Kubernetes master. So we don't do anything, and we don't fork anything, and we always keep AKS and plan to keep AKS 100% vanilla and upstream. All right, so covered innovation, controls, seamless integration with FSecOps. I already mentioned the no charge piece and how you actually get the ability to have infinite clusters for free with the control plane, paying only for the nodes. So really, if you're thinking of your environments, oh, I could set up a quick, 5 nodes cluster. Sure, how many of those are going to be for the control plane? 1, 3. So you're just paying for 3 nodes, 1 node, if you really don't care about availability. In AKS, you can actually do the exact same thing and get that control plane for free. But not just that. You also have a lot of ways to deliver cost efficiency for your business and to be cost efficient with your applications. AKS actually leverage Azure VMs, as a lot of you might know. By the way, who here is already an AKS user today? All right, about half of the room. So about half of the room, you probably already know that. These are Azure VMs that are then bootstrapped into Kubernetes nodes. And as Azure VMs that you see in your subscription, you can actually leverage all the constructs that Azure has for you for cost optimization. From using spot nodes, choosing your size, to even leveraging discounts that your business might have with Microsoft, to leveraging reserved instances or hybrid benefits for licensing discounts. Everything that you can use in the IaaS world, in the infrastructure as a service world, you can use with AKS to optimize that. That gives you really the largest set of knobs and flexibility to optimize for your applications, not just the control plane side. And the availability. Again, a little bit like on some of the ones at the top, we benefit a lot from the fact we're in Azure, and Azure is in more regions than anyone else. The small work, and I say between quotes because it's actually not that small, for us is to make sure that we are in every single region, which we are today. I guess it's every single Azure region out there, in every single both commercial and sovereign cloud region that we have in Azure. And not only that, but we are in every single new region that Azure is planning and is launching today. So as a region comes up, you can go there and AKS will be there, and it's there today, and it will be there for all the regions coming up. All right, so let's maybe take a quick look at the demo. I think half of you have used AKS. So I think a lot of this is going to be very familiar to you. You're probably not going to get surprised by anything. Maybe I'll surprise you with some new things, maybe not. For those of you that haven't seen AKS, this is the Azure portal. Just selected a Kubernetes cluster, and really quickly, we're going to just set this in a resource group, which is this construct in Azure that holds resources, in this case, a Kubernetes cluster. We're going to give it a name. Now, on the AKS create flow, you actually get these presets nicely placed that actually allow you to select between different quick starts, presets, profiles, as you would like to call them, that have these different scenarios, like dev test, or a cost optimized way, our standard kind of production cluster, or our hardened access one. And when you select each one of these, it will automatically pre-select values for you that you can all change. So these are, nothing here is static, that's our typical way. We provide you these rapid experiences without compromising your flexibility. So if you want to select hardened access, but want to take, say, private cluster, or want to remove something or change something, you're absolutely able to. This is just to simplify the selections that you make. Once that's done, we can go to the end. We can review our selections or change any of them, enable any features and disable any features that we want, and get on with creating the cluster. And you'll see it grind away, and our cluster is now created. So from here, you're able to go to the cluster, you're able to paste YAMLs and quickly view your resources from Kubernetes like you'd see in like kubectl or kubectl, depending on which side of the fence you're on. Or you could just go ahead and create a new application very simply. If you have something already containerized, which in this case I have in my container registry, you could bring up your own container registry as well, obviously. You'd have an image, and you saw that we could actually list all the images in that container registry since I have access to it. And you can just add some parameters there that would be your typical YAML file manifest parameters. This is actually going to translate 100% into the YAML manifest that you expect from a deployment and a service. For those of you that know Kubernetes very well, there's nothing, no CRDs, no secret sauce here. This is pure, plain Kubernetes, and you actually give it to you right at the end with the namespace, the deployment, and the service. And then you could just go ahead and simply create it, and this is just going to apply and deploy these manifests into Kubernetes. So again, very easy to get started from, again, 0 to a cluster and having a simple application deployed in that cluster. You can even just quickly say a view, and it will jump you into the sample application that we just demonstrated here. You could very well as well just go back into the portal, check your resources, check your services, your deployments, your pods, see if anything is having issues, as an example. If you need to troubleshoot, we can have a troubleshoot session. What happens if this application misbehaves? What's your next steps? So Patrick is going to be covering that a bit later on. All right, so continuing. Talked about the regions already. Another key thing for us is our compliance and certifications that we have. Over 90, I think 95 actually, over 95 compliance certifications we have today. A little bit like before, this is like a commercial. Told you fastest service to create clusters out there. So a little bit like the commercials, if you find a service that creates faster, we give you your money back, which is pretty easy because it's free. But same thing with the certifications. If there's a certification out there you need that you don't see covered, same thing. Typically in that case, reach out to us. We'd rather just support that for you and to help you out as well. So that's actually something that we're trying to do more and more now. Is not just give you all the knobs you need, but actually give you some guidance as well. So you might have seen already some of our guidance for things like PCI DSS and for credit card payments as an example. And there's many more out there, FedRAMP, HIPAA. We have guidance for everything coming up, and we would love to know. So later today, we'll be doing a quick panel where we want to kind of have a more two-way discussion with you. So I'd love to know what kind of things you're looking for, what kind of things we can do to help you, as an example, to get your app certified. But the bottom line is we put a lot of effort and work into making sure that you can achieve any type of certification and regulation with AKS. We have pretty much customers running anything and everything on AKS. You see 94% of the Fortune 500 running production workloads on AKS today, and not just production. In most cases, like these Fortune 500 mission critical workloads, from life and health type of workloads, first responders, to critical banking systems, to critical financial systems. We pretty much have a little bit of everything there. I typically get the question over the years, what kind of workloads and scenarios do you see a lot in AKS? And I used to answer, it's actually easier to say the ones I don't see. And that's not even true today anymore. There's nothing I haven't seen in AKS at this point. Like literally every single workload that you can think of and imagine. If your question is that running on AKS? Yes, either in the cloud or at the edge. We get pretty much 100% coverage of the scenarios out there. But there's an additional thing that I don't think we talk about a lot. And Corey did mention some of the things we have here, for example, in partnership with Forza and other folks. And that is the fact that Azure itself is running and is powered by Kubernetes. Now, this is interesting for a number of factors, as you can imagine, because obviously it allows Azure to be more optimized and to be more customized and aligned with Kubernetes. And it also allows us in our Kubernetes kind of contributions as well, in the projects that we launch, in the SIGs that we participate, to also help improve things in a way that will improve not just AKS, but all of Azure as a whole. And you'll see that then, as Microsoft has a lot of its kind of arms, like say Microsoft 365 or Office or even Xbox or GitHub or Teams or Forza running on Azure, that is in itself as well running on AKS and in Kubernetes today. So I normally, with a room like this, these days I remember doing this a few years back and saying that probably you'd use something today, you are using something now, and you will use something later that is running on AKS. I've actually tried to do this test with a small room recently, and that was 100% hit for everybody, all three. So I used to say at least one of them. I think this is probably that all three. You've already used something today, you are using something today, you'll probably use something today that is running on Kubernetes right now. Now, a lot of you are actually paying attention, so you might not be doing anything, but let's give me this one for a second. All right, so this is pretty amazing for a number of reasons. Not only because we can improve Azure to be more aligned with Kubernetes, but also these services kind of bring things to sometimes another level. If you've seen any of our articles, well, like with Forza as an example, and getting from like the 5 to 10 million users, concurrent users at launch, if you see our numbers for Teams and how many users and organizations are using it every day, at every given second, you'll see that the scale that we're talking here is really, I don't know if there's something other than planetary scale, but there's something like universe scale. That's probably what we're dealing with here. And this puts and I say this kind of with a smile, this puts a lot of pressure in us, in AKS, in the team, in order to be able to have both the service and the contributions necessary upstream to get a lot of these things done. A lot of these things have required a number of upstream fixes for either scale or functionality or flexibility or constraints that these teams, that these services need in order to run in a cloud-native way and still serve all their customers. So these are kind of the duality of having this. It both pushes the platform in the right way, and the platform as well pushes us in the right way and pushes Kubernetes in the right way. So we're pretty happy to see more and more how Azure is 100% powered by Kubernetes, and will continue to be. Now, so this is a little bit of where we are today and some of the things about us. So what is our current mission and what we're trying to do here, and where are we going next? So our current mission really that evolved from, just to recap, getting a cluster to you at your fingertips, fully configured, fully ready in just a few minutes, to getting you that cluster and managing it you at day 2, into continuing to provide you with end-to-end experiences. And again, continue to think that these are wrappers, not actual abstractions, because this is always going to be vanilla Kubernetes, but providing you with these experiences to allow you to focus on the business. So to take more and more things that you need to worry about, from authentication, it's not really something that Kubernetes deals in that we want to provide for you, to scanning, to secret management, to recommendations, to configuration of environments, to registry, to your developer environments and how you set them up. So all the end-to-end stories and experiences that actually get you from, code to Kubernetes or code to deployment as you see fit. And doing so, providing these end-to-end experience while still, A, giving you the full extensibility that Kubernetes has, in that you don't need to use any of those things in order to achieve a full platform. You can swap that with anything that you're using today, such as the benefit of Kubernetes. But also the fact that all the solutions for the problems that we're building, that we have built and that we are building and contributed as vendor-neutral open source. And I kind of didn't want to ruin my half circle, but there's actually a lot more these days, and I promise I'll think of a different thing for next time. But things like great misses, like Notary and other things that we're going to be talking about this week are missing here. So this is just really a quick sample. Don't think of this as the only list, and that would be many, many slides. But all of these solve specific problems that we had with our users. Our users were like, okay, I need something that helps my bootstrapping of code into Kubernetes. I have people that never use Kubernetes, and we might have a team that is kind of managing the clusters, but our developers don't really know how to interact with it. So that kind of prompted us to create Draft. All the way back in time, we need kind of policy enforcement for Kubernetes, and really, aside from, at the time, these PSPs that probably don't even resonate with any of you anymore are not cutting it because they're just focused on security and we need to go broader and they're not flexible enough. And so we created at the time something, I think it's called Kubernetes Policy Controller, that then eventually the name was not that marketable, and again, Corey and folks didn't really like that name, and so we actually went on to change a name to Gatekeeper, as it's a project that's donated to CNCF, part of partner with OPA, has Rigo to define it, and it's now a basis for not just AKS, but a lot of other Kubernetes-based platforms out there, and with a vibrant community, and hopefully a lot of you working on it and using it either directly or via Azure Policy. Keyword, or via Azure Policy, because that's the type of integration that we're looking for. Deliver Gatekeeper, make sure it works anywhere, make sure you can use it anywhere the same way, never compromise that portability, but then create a wrapper in Azure that makes it simple. If you're like, I don't necessarily want to learn Rigo, I don't necessarily want to learn how Gatekeeper works or how an admission controller works or mutations work, can you just kind of provide me something that does this? And that's the kind of integrations we do, okay? So with Azure Policy, you can go, have a UI, click, 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 you get some policies going, and we deploy this for you. You want to export that and go deploy that somewhere else, be it in AKS at the edge, or be it in any other Kubernetes cluster anywhere, you can still do that. Gatekeeper works anywhere, you can run those policies anywhere as well. So this is key for the way that we are both solving problems and the way that we have solved problems, and aligns with the principles that I mentioned before that we're doing. Okay, so enough preamble. Let's talk about some of the things we're going to be showing today, and let's announce some things that I know you're looking forward. So we're going to have a couple things for you today. You're going to have presentations on developer productivity, multi-layer security. We're going to have presentations on how to operate at scale with excellence, and on unified management, specifically on the multi-cluster space. These are, unsurprisingly, matching very well with our pillars and our investment areas that we have on our slide. So we're also going to have, as you see at the bottom, a presentation focused on the ecosystem and how we actually are working on improving the Kubernetes ecosystem, regardless of how that is integrated directly with AKS or not. We want to partner with a number of, be it software vendors, with communities, with open source projects, just make sure they run great on Kubernetes and run great on AKS as well, naturally, but focusing mostly on that ecosystem piece and ensuring that we have a rich ecosystem out there that can help you and your projects. All right, so the part you were looking for. So quick question to see if you're still with me. For those of you that I guess use AKS or even Kubernetes, what's kind of the biggest feature or most anticipated feature that you'd definitely like to have in AKS? Go ahead, just scream it out. Yeah. I'm not sure I heard everything, but security.
And that
yes.
requires our engineers.
Definitely, definitely. We'll have some of that, and we can definitely talk about that more on the developer space presentation for sure. Absolutely.
Okay.
Thank you for the question. What else? What kind of features are you looking for AKS?
Better GitOps, like comparison to like Argos CD or Flux or something. There was something in preview for a little bit, but I don't know if that's GA. Hopefully.
It is GA, yes, indeed. GitOps, the GitOps agent integration with AKS and AKS on Edge is absolutely GA'd already and enables you to use Flux in production and in a GA manner, for sure. What else? Kubernetes operator, yes. ASO, we're definitely going to be talking about that today as well. And also GA, yeah.
Is there a way to install any operators like Helm chart or whatever to marketplace? I think that's kind of missing right now.
Yes, sir. We just announced last 2 weeks ago Kubernetes app on the marketplace.
Can I repeat the question so everyone can hear?
Absolutely. The question was any features that you'd like to see on ACAS really, really quickly. And so we're going to be talking about the marketplace also later today, together with operators for sure. What else? Multi-cluster management in eBPF. So multi-cluster management in eBPF. Are we working together, sir? Have we ever worked together? Okay. For the audience, we never worked together. We don't know each other. This is like this magician's show. I was going to go until anybody said Cilium and eBPF. So we're really, really happy to announce the integration of Azure CNI, control plane, and Cilium for data plane. So for those of you that don't know, Cilium, obviously, it's a very popular CNI out there, leveraging all the great latest and greatest eBPF capabilities to deliver this extremely great performance and fantastic scalability capabilities. Now, one of the key things that we've been working on specifically in this area, though, is we didn't want to just kind of just throw Cilium out there. You probably might have heard about bring your own CNI that AKS has, which allows you to just throw in whatever you want. That's not exactly what we wanted. We wanted something fully supported. And we don't just want to, have Cilium kind of a little bit Yankee or hacked up with Azure CNI, because there's one key thing that is typically where you got a little bit of performance heat with some of these solutions, and in Kubernetes is on the actual IPAM side. And so we spent quite a few years improving and by IPAM, I mean stuff that gives you IPs to pods. All right. And we spent a lot of time to get the performance of this really, really nailed to the point where we now have two modes that you can think in Azure. You have the Azure CNI mode that probably a lot of you are familiar with, which is you get IPs from the VNet, called VNet mode. So your pods get IPs from pretty much the same or different subnets as your nodes have, but from an actual Azure VNet. And we have a recently announced overlay mode, where actually the IPs for the pods are now completely non-routable. And you actually get the ability to have your nodes in a VNet and your pods in a completely fake CIDR in a completely fake IP space. Now that actually, and if you probably know AKS for some time and you've been working for it for a few years, maybe you might know about KubeCon, that we have that. It's it's kind of an overlay in that the pod IPs are not routable, but this host routing has a lot of implication, has a lot of forwarding, requires route tables, requires a number of things for actually making that translation, and that actually gives you some performance penalty. So we didn't want that, and we were also already kind of looking to see how could we explore some of the great things from eBPF as well. So what we went on and did is, what about if we provided the IPAM, be it from a VNet perspective or overlay perspective, and the overlay perspective one gives you pretty much the same performance as the VNet one, which is, I mean, you can't really get better than that. It's a direct hop. Like you can have pod communication to the outside and back. So it's like there's no forwarding there whatsoever. So how can we get the same but with overlay? So we did it by going all the way into the hosts, into the networking lower layer of Azure to deliver this. And it has pretty much the same performance that you get with VNet IPs, but in an overlay mode. So now we get this great control plane to give you the IPs really, really fast, just in time, great performance. And we want to leverage the data plane capabilities, the network policies, the services and load balancing capabilities of Cilium. And that's now at your fingertips from today. So let's take a quick look at how this works. All right, so really quickly, assuming that it starts, there we go. So really quickly, it's very easy. You just create a cluster, throw in network plugin Azure for the Azure CNI IPAM, and then you throw in enable the Cilium data plane, and you're going to get a cluster that has the Azure CNS at the top and Cilium running. So the Azure IPAM and the Cilium for network policy and load balancing. The key thing is you get a network policy out of the box, so you don't need to enable it or anything after the fact. You can just, to show you its works, I mean, most of you already heard you talk about eBPF, so you probably know the goodness of Cilium, but if you create a simple web app, then you go ahead and get a service, try to access it, that will just work right outside, out of the box pretty simple. So we can just do, in this case, it's a cluster IP, so we can get this test app going inside the cluster. And from this test app, we can just really quickly test that everything is working across the cluster in order for this test app to access our web service. So do something random like a simple wget or curl or anything like it, and you'll see that it works as expected. Now, to prove that you saw how the cluster was enabled, I didn't turn off any network policy by default, show that that is actually working. You can actually see the endpoints that you have there, and we can actually see within Cilium, you actually see all the BPF mappings that correspond to that. So this is not just necessarily kubeproxy doing all the work. You actually get all the endpoints mapped in BPF. So if we list them, you will notice, again, from those endpoints, you see that 241.25 and that 241.40, and you got both of them right here as well. All right, so Cilium is definitely running there. BPF is definitely running there. Let's take a look now at our network policy at work. So once we get that simple deny all network policy that I do for demo purposes and because I'm already running out of time, we can just go ahead and apply this network policy, and then we can test this connectivity again, and guess what's going to happen? It's going to fail. So policy is there. We can even go ahead and look at the monitor for Cilium that actually gives you information about how the network policies are being applied and what's going on. And you can actually go ahead now and test the same command we did before that worked, and you'll immediately see the policy deny working real time. So you just apply that right away, connection stopped, and you see the denies in the Cilium monitor piece. You also mentioned, sir, multi-cluster management. And again, we're not working together, right? So for this, we just announced a couple weeks ago Azure Kubernetes Fleet Manager to deliver exactly that multi-cluster management and capabilities that we have there. It's not just about management. It's also about workload placement, ensuring that you can run workloads across many, many clusters, ensuring that you can orchestrate them across different regions, and also expose them globally, either different clusters in the same region, but also different clusters in multiple regions. And in the future, we expect to bring as well, we're working on this right now, federated identities and additional infrastructure management and lifecycle capabilities, like we're planning on having staged upgrades for different environments, allowing you to treat different environments inside a fleet differently. And a fleet is basically a Kubernetes resource itself. Once again, we don't want to have anything that is not portable, that doesn't reuse, that is not Kubernetes native. So the hub cluster is actually a fully managed Kubernetes cluster. And all these resources are just CRD wrappers that deploy the absolute native components into each of the member clusters that you added to the fleet. So as you, and we'll see that later today in the multi-cluster presentation, as you deploy something to the fleet and across the board, you can go into any cluster and you see absolutely a set of native components that you could have gone and deployed yourself manually. Now, not enough. Here's a couple more things. Windows Server 2022, that is now GA. ARM64 notebooks to get you that price for performance improvements, now GA as well. Premium SSD v2 for also better price to performance is now GA and available on the Azure Disk CNI as well. 125, we already talked about it, delivering that new capabilities on security, on the open source space, is now available in preview. Mariner node pools, you might have missed this announcement a couple weeks ago as well. Mariner is a Microsoft first-party owned Linux distribution that is fully open source, that we've been developing and running in a lot of those, well, all of those logos that you saw before internally, and that we're now making available to everyone. So if you want to run a operating system, Linux operating system in this case, again, still fully open source, but has all the benefits of Microsoft's supply chain directly in it. So Microsoft does all the binary building, all the patching directly. Mariner is your option for that. Azure Blob CSI to actually enable you to use storage blobs directly from your cluster. You could use files, you could use disks, you could use any type of PVs, and Blob CSI is also now fully managed and GA. And finally, Ubuntu 22.04. You want to run Ubuntu, you love Ubuntu. I love it too. It makes perfect sense. You want to have the latest one. I agree. So with 1.25, we're making Ubuntu 22.04 available for everyone, and you can go ahead and get Ubuntu 22.04 today in your 1.25 clusters. And when you upgrade into 1.25, your Ubuntu 18.04 or your no pools, if you do no pool or no pool, will be upgraded to it. And finally, the last thing that we have for today before Corey kicks me out is to talk a little bit about WASM. So actually, there's two last things. It's until I get tackled. So for WASM, if you don't know what WASM is, it's basically technology that's been around for some time, a specification to run type of binaries in browsers, typically. That's how it got created. And being run in browsers a little bit next to the JavaScript engine, it's been pretty attacked. It's pretty lightweight, it's pretty portable, but at the same way, it's very secure. Browsers are one of the most attacked things out there. And so anything that you do in kind of a WASM module that you need to do actually needs to have host access. So you don't really get to do anything. It has their own memory, so you don't really get to see anything outside of it. So it's really, really good from a security perspective, and it's really, really proven. But a little bit like JavaScript, you don't use it just in the browser. You can actually now run JavaScript in the server, and same thing with WASM. You can actually leverage WASM on the server side now, especially with runtimes like WASM Time as an example. And again, I cannot really go into detail, but I think there was a full WASM day yesterday where you can see this, but this is basically kind of a LLVM-based, stack-based VM that WASM uses, and a WASM module, you can think of it as a DLL, and you can kind of keep this for now. We can revisit that later on today on the last session if you want to know more about WASM. But the announcement for today is you can actually now run WASM no pools in AKS. Now, if you were with us last KubeCon, you might have heard something about this already, and you're like, isn't this what you announced last time? Well, the key difference now is that last time we were using Crustlet. It's kind of this kubelet replacement to run these modules. This is actually running natively in a node that is running kubelet and containerd, and is leveraging containerd shims to actually run these modules. What this actually means, as you see in the picture, is that you can actually run containers in the same node as you run these modules. You can have them communicate. You can leverage the same capabilities like CNI that we just saw, like load balancing that we just saw, and still run this. This has a much lightweight footprint that you can run at the edge, as an example. And you can, obviously, you don't want to test in your tiny IoT device. You can test that on AKS and just immediately port it into the edge really, really quickly. And these things are blazing fast. So again, for a demo on this, I'll show you later at the end. I promised I had it. See, it's actually right here. And finally, let's move on.
Get an extra finally.
Yes, yes. Now it's the finally, I promise. So just wanted to talk as a final point on sustainability. It's something that probably a lot of you are concerned about. A lot of businesses we know are concerned about, and we're definitely concerned and focused on this as well. And we're really happy to announce, once again, PowerPoint messing up. I guess it's really kicking me out. We're really happy to announce the sustainability guidance for Azure Kubernetes Service that allows you to optimize your workloads to become more carbon aware, to become more green at the end of the day. And we have this in the well-architected framework all up for Azure, and we have a specific area for AKS with this today. You can just visit it on aka.ms/AKS/sustainability. And we really would like to thank kind of the Green Software Foundation for their pioneering of this principle. So if you don't know what carbon aware and what carbon emissions and how this works, this is really all about, are you energy efficient? Meaning, are you actually able to have your workloads consume the least possible amount of energy? What does that mean? Well, if you think of it, it could be event-driven, changing from always on to like a more event-driven, making sure that you're scaling down to 0, making sure you're on AKS, you're stopping your cluster, which is something you can do when you're not using it. So that way you're a lot more energy efficient. Hardware efficiency, make sure you're right-sizing your SKUs. Make sure you're using things like Spot to leverage spare capacity. It gives you two benefits right there, cost and hardware efficiency, and then carbon awareness, which is sometimes you still need to run. And this actually allows you to, when you run, to make sure that you're actually running when the electricity is cleaner versus dirtier, meaning it's emitting less carbon, having less carbon emissions as it's produced than it was. So for AKS, we want to be both carbon efficient and carbon aware for you. So again, making sure that you can enable you to run things when the energy is cleaner, and making sure that you can be efficient as you're running them for both cost and carbon emissions. Right now today, we have already the sustainability guidance ready for you on those first two. And we are preparing an assessment for you to run self-guided and run it yourself to see what is your kind of sustainability score and what kind of things you can do. We have a lot of optimization, and Justin is going to talk a bit about VPA, which is something that we're launching as well that you can leverage for this, vertical pod autoscaler, ARM64 that I just mentioned, image cleaner that is great for security but also reduces your footprint and resources. And for carbon awareness, which is really where a lot of the magic, we're partnering with the Azure hardware teams, with the regional teams, to actually give you the ability to do region shifting. Again, you can already do this with AKS and Fleet today, but with region shifting, you can actually go into the region with the least carbon emissions. So if you don't have a tight coupling with a region, you can actually shift into a region that is a lot more, maybe it's fully based on, sustainable sources of energy. And so you can actually shift your workloads into the greenest region. You can do time shifting. Think power sources, like when you're in the power grid, you go at night instead of during the day. Same thing here. Maybe you can time when your workloads run into a time where there's less carbon emissions, and you can actually do it in a cleaner way. Yeah?
So do you make the data available for, which region is got the cleanest electricity?
That's why the box is not ticked yet. So that information, we're working with the regional teams and the hardware teams to make that available today. There's already a few SDKs out there that are being created, and they're going to be made available for you, for all of you, as Azure All Up, and AKS is actually integrating it with things like KDA to actually, and with Fleet, to actually enable you to swap between regions. And finally, time shifting and demand shifting, which is really all about, can you make your workload run when it's best? And can you make it run when the energy is cleanest, right? As it runs, make sure it runs as the energy is cleanest. And KDA is actually, so Fleet Manager for region shifting, as I mentioned, for time shifting, again, the time windows that I mentioned. And finally, we have a POC working today with KDA that actually enables you to have that environmental impact in your scaler. So KDA is an open source project that runs everywhere once more. And you can actually see, as an example, you measure the emissions and you scale based on those emissions. So you actually stop yourself from running it at full capacity, as an example, when the emissions are really, really high, and this is really using dirty electricity. All right, so this is all for today. I will definitely encourage you, we're now part of a working group on the CNCF and the Green Software Foundation. I definitely encourage anyone interested in this topic to work with us. We will be producing a lot of updates on this over the next couple of months, and we're pretty excited to kind of give this, again, to your fingertips and enable you to be a lot more sustainable, at the same time that you save costs and continue to be more productive and get a lot more velocity. All right, so with this, I'm going to give it to our next session. Thank you very much for listening in, and hope you have a great day.